Hey, this is Brian Crecente, news editor at Polygon, and we're here in San Francisco, specifically in the Double Fine offices with Tim Schafer, who is the founder of Double Fine. How you doing?
Yes, very good. Thank you for coming down here. You just happened to be here.
I was in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
I thought I'd swing by.
I saw you walking by the window, and I said,
like, Brian,
let's talk about games.
So you have like a lot of stuff going on right now, game-wise.
Yeah, we do. We changed from doing one thing at a time.
Yeah, there was a time when you would have a game every few years, and now you have a few games every year.
Every year. Yeah, and that's on purpose.
Okay.
Luckily. I mean, it took like 4 and 5 years to get each of Brutal Legend and Psychonauts done. And since we opened it up to the whole company and let other people besides me run projects, they just get them done a lot faster. Yeah, I mean, Brutal Legend was like somewhere between $15, $25 million, depending on who you talk to. And I realized if next gen it's going to be more and more expensive, and asking for those kind of big amounts of money would mean that the business deal would probably not be very good because you couldn't keep your IP and all that.
Right.
And also the creativity would be hampered by the risk mitigation. Like if you have to spend that much money on a game, you got to make sure every single person's going to like it, and there's no one who'll be alienated by it, by anything at all. And that was really hard when I was pitching like something like, I really like heavy metal. I'm like, what about people who don't? We should make sure take out that part because that might alienate someone. So seeing that that was going to get worse and worse, just made me want to make small games where we could, get them done fast and risk a little bit of money so we could still be really creative and original with them.
So you guys during, tell me if I'm right about this, but during Brutal Legend had this idea of sort of having everybody stop for a bit and sort of do this thing where you came up with other ideas for small little projects. That was, what is that?
Amnesia Fortnite?
That's the one.
We forget what we're working on for 2 weeks.
Right, and try to come up with these other projects. And that seems to be what has led to this blossoming of games. Yeah. I mean, would you say that's
because I was scared that someone was going to bump me off because there was no room to grow in the company because there was just me in one project. One lead programmer, one lead artist, and then all of a sudden we had 4 lead programmers, 4 lead artists, and 4 project leaders. So they didn't have to bump me off in order to get promoted. So self-preservation.
That makes sense. You have had, 3 or 4 of those now? How many have you done?
Yeah, we did one in 2007. I think we're on 5.
5.
Yeah.
And it's seemingly every time you've done one now, you've had games that have come out of that you're releasing.
Yeah, we've always had at least one of them turn into a full-blown produced game. Usually about 50% of them get me on average. So, Costume Quest and Stacking and Once Upon a Monster and Iron Brigade and Middle Manager of Justice and Hack and Slash and Space Base are the newest ones.
Now those 2 came out in some form, but now you guys are sort of doubling down on them. Is that right? Or what's the status on both those games?
On Hack and Slash and Space
Yes.
Base? No, they're being Indie Fund invested in them, and we are publishing them. Space Base came out of early access, so you can play it right now in early access and getting feedback on it and working on it. And Hack and Slash is going to come out later this year.
Those so Hack and Slash. Let's talk about that for a minute, because that is a game. I saw this last night. I was looking at it. It is, first off, amazing looking. And actually, before we go down the road, you should explain, because I'm not going to be able to summarize what it is. How would you explain it?
It's Brandon Dillon, one of our project leaders in Amnesia Fortnite, had this idea of doing a game where a young elf uses her hacking skills to get through what seems like a traditional adventure, something inspired by something like Zelda. But one of the things that Brandon cited as being magical about those Zelda games was besides all the hidden secrets and the feeling that anything could happen, he also remembers playing them with like a game genie, and being able to change the game and using that to and I remember this too from when I was playing text adventures as a kid. I would open up the files on the disc to like find text strings that would give me hints. Oh, I should stick the gum on the grating. I see. And Brandon would use it to change things about the game to give him more firepower and stuff like that. And so he's making a game where you actually do use those kind of hacking skills. Your character has a USB jack and a plug, and you can go and plug into enemies and change their hit points, and make them walk backwards and all kinds of things, and use that to solve puzzles and actually kind of learn the fundamentals of actual hacking.
And it's interesting, like what I saw last night, for instance, it changes the view when you start hacking, and it shows sort of what I would imagine maybe a game looks like in development when it's just placeholder
like
art.
Debug mode.
Yeah. And then he was going in and like adding, rebuilding the bridge that didn't like wasn't completely built, and doing things that you mentioned. One of the things I thought that was interesting though was that as much as I like that game and as cool as it looks, it feels like a game that is incredibly focused on a particular audience. Like, you're not gonna, maybe you will, but this doesn't seem like a game that's an easy sell to Walmart. So like, is that kind of goes back to this idea that now that you have these small games, you guys can just do these things that are sort of passion projects?
Well, everything we've made, I think, is a passion project, and I think the idea that you have to go through Walmart is just different. That used to be the discussions, like we can't have this thing on the cover of the game because Walmart won't sell it, and therefore that, and now we're, distributing digitally, and we're self-publishing, and we don't have to worry about those kind of things. So I think we saw with the Kickstarter, there's this genre of games, adventure games, that people had decided weren't selling enough to fund, but then the people who buy them themselves said, no, there are enough of us, and Kickstarter allowed them to organize and pool their money together, and to prove that you can make a living off of what was considered a small group of people.
Right.
Because there's two ways of looking at it, like an audience is like, what is the maximum possible audience for this? What's the thing that we can make that can capture as many people as possible? And the other question is like, can we capture enough people with this idea to pay for it, to get it made? Is it viable? You don't want to lose money on it. You want to make some money on it. Is that possible? Instead of like, you might say, yes, that's possible. You can make an adventure game. You can make hack and slash. But in the old days, someone would say, but you could make more money if you made a sequel or a licensed property, and therefore that you wouldn't make that first game.
Right.
But now we can actually say like, no, this actually, we can make a living doing this.
Well, and Kickstarter, the idea is also, I think it's neat because if you're doing backing with backers, that maybe you're getting 100% of that audience. Like, if you want to do something that's very specific, you can use that, I think, to say, okay, I want to make this game, and if enough of you say that you're going to buy this game, I'm going to make it. And there's no sort of questions, unless I'm misunderstanding Kickstarter. Is that how you feel it works?
Yeah, I mean, it also help you, like if it turned out there was no audience, because we didn't know when we started our Kickstarter.
Right.
People would come up, like we show in the video, and say, I would pay for a copy. And I was like, that's interesting. So that's $35 right there. But how many of them are you? And if our Kickstarter hadn't been funded, at least we'd know, we probably don't want to try that. And so it's kind of self-correcting.
Do you think your Kickstarter success, coming when it did, if you did that same exact Kickstarter today, do you think it would have been as successful?
I mean, definitely we had the advantage of being, for a lot of people, the first Kickstarter they had heard of.
Right.
Maybe they'd backed at FTL or something like that, or another art project. But it brought a lot of new backers, and so that was definitely an advantage of like, what is this crazy concept? I can help. But we did a second Kickstarter, Massive Chalice, that was also overfunded, and so.
Right.
But I think you can't just go back and replicate that same thing. It would have to be a story that's interesting for another reason. You know what I mean? Like, we have this other crazy idea that couldn't get made without the help of the backers.
So your Fortnite stuff, speaking of crazy ideas.
Yeah.
Obviously,
and encouraging them.
Yeah, there are a lot of really neat things that you guys do. Is it something that you're going to keep doing? It seems like you are pretty good, committed to the idea.
Yeah, I love Amnesia Fortnite because it's anybody in the company can pitch a game. Anybody could end up running a game, and we let the internet vote on our community votes on which game we make, which is a great help sometimes because I don't know everything. I know almost everything, but I don't obviously know everything. But they pick out things like Space Base is a really awesome game, but I hadn't played Dwarf Fortress or Prison Architect yet, and so I didn't know how passionate people are about these games, and I learned about it after JP pitched it. I was like, that sounds cool, but the fact that they voted for it so much, I was like, wow, that was really educational for me.
Do you think those two games, what are your expectations when they're released to the market? Do you think they're going to do really well, or does it even matter?
No, it does matter, and I really hope they do really well. I mean, Space Base has already done really well, and recouped its investment. You saw an announcement from Indie Fund that, and that's really gratifying. And that's the thing is with making smaller games and making them less expensively than less than $20 million. They don't have to sell 5 million copies to make money off of them.
Right. So last week, I think it was last week, you guys announced a publishing deal where you're gonna have
Costume Quest 2, Midnight City.
Published, right?
Yeah.
So why do that? You seem like you're in a space now where you don't need to go to publishers. Why get a publisher?
Because we don't need to. So
why not then, right?
That's the best time to have a good relationship with someone. Is you not. In the old days, we would be like, "Hey, we're about to go out of business. Could you please publish our game?" And they would say, "Yes, we'll publish your game, but we get to cut off 3 of your fingers." And you'd be like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I'm paraphrasing
a little bit.
Yeah, but it would be like that, where you would you'd be watching the money. If you had one project, your company was only funded by the one project, and it got canceled, like say sometimes happens twice. You really have to take their deal, and it can have the onerous terms in it, like they take your IP away,
right?
Or they have to get paid back 4 times their investment before you get any money. Like, these are common kind of terms in publishing contracts, and but now that our survival is not dependent on that, because we're self-publishing, we have the Kickstarter games, the Indie Fund games, our angel investor like Dracogen, and now we can actually talk to them like partners. Like, hey, do you want to help us, fund and distribute this game? And our goals are a lot more aligned than they were in the old days. And so, what Casey's doing with Midnight City, I think, is definitely a different kind of publisher. It's not the old kind of parent-child relationship you might have had in the old days. It's really like they like Costume Quest, we like them, we like Majesco. We had a good relationship on Psychonauts. So I would say it's like a not as heavy-handed publishing type thing. They're not coming in and telling us how to make Costume Quest 2 or anything like that.
Right. You just kind of went through. You guys have done a lot of different sort of funding. You've got angel investors. You've done Indie Fund. You've done Kickstarter. Why are you guys like? I know that there are other people probably experimenting, but it seems like as game developers, you experiment more than others. Maybe. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you?
Nothing to lose. I mean, a lot of well, we try to be a company that supports creativity, and I think it doesn't just mean our artists and our writers are creative, but our programmers are super creative, and I think our business attitudes are creative. We try to support creativity all across the board, and I think we also don't. I was frustrated with a lot of the ways that the old machine used to work in games publishing. Sorry about that.
What you had for lunch?
Yeah, I ate a clown.
I won't finish that joke. Did it taste funny?
I can't believe I ate the whole thing. So, what were we talking about?
Your creative use of accounting. No.
Yeah, I was frustrated. I did, the old thing wasn't a good fit for me.
Right.
I want to do a creative game that takes a lot of risks, and talking to somebody who you got millions of dollars from, and explaining why you want to do this risky thing with their money that's an experiment is awkward, and it leads to a tense relationship. And so we like to try different things. I mean, the Kickstarter thing was just it was not, I want to say, looking back on it, we totally planned for it to be this, but it was an idea for a documentary that 2Player came to us with. Like, we want to make a documentary, and no one seemed to think it was going to be a big thing. And so I'm just saying, sometimes these things happen on accident. Sometimes they're planned, but definitely being more and more independent has always been our MO. And I think since we founded the company, it was like how to have the most amount of creative authority, and creative autonomy as possible. And this is just a progression of that. Because when you self-publish, you have a lot more control over it. You write your own ticket a lot more.
So where do you go from here? You've got, obviously, you have what, 6? How many projects do you have going right now?
We have Broken Age Part 2,
right,
still going on. Massive Chalice, Brad's awesome game. And we have Space Base in early access right now. And we have Hack and Slash coming out soon. We have announced Costume Quest 2. I think we're up to 5 right there.
That's 5, yeah.
And and then some potatoes going on.
Well, and you also have what you just did with. Do you count those, the Fortnite stuff? Like you have like a couple of those that are being developed, right?
Well, you mean the other ones, the older ones, or the brand new ones?
The brand new ones.
The brand new ones, yeah. We just finished a Mission Fortnite where we had Anna Kipnis ran a project, and Derek Brand, and John Bernhelm, and our special guest Pendleton Ward from Adventure Time.
Right.
Came up, and we made these 4 games, and they're all really cool. And so now what we do is we think about which ones would work as a full game, and almost all of them, I think, you can see them being a full game. And so now our VP of Biz Dev, Justin Bailey, takes them out and sees what kind of opportunities he can generate for them. Sometimes it's an investor, sometimes it's, we should kickstart this, or sometimes it's who knows what kind of opportunity. Just, there are a lot of different things at different times, different opportunities going around, and we try to match them up with the right one.
Is there a hierarchy of funding? Like, is there something you like? We're always going to think of Kickstarter first, and then we'll think of this, or do you kind of look
No,
at
I think it has to be just right, because I think for Kickstarter it has to be something that is a good story that the community will feel like this is something where we're needed. This is right. This is like if we just went to them with any old project, they might feel like we're just going back to the well for no reason. But I think because some projects they just are just right for Kickstarter, and some projects are right for an investor. And,
Right. Is there a number that you like? Do you feel like there's a cap for this studio in terms of how many you guys are working on at once? Now that you're doing these smaller projects.
Oh yeah, I mean we're still around the same size as we were during Brutal Legend. Like
Right.
We're still around 60, and so obviously we cannot make too many games. There's actually last year we were doing a lot of games. We did we did for the Sony Playhouse that there was a little one in there that's a Double Fine product called My Alien Buddy and Drop Chord, and so that was a much smaller game. It was really just like a few people, or really just Patrick making that game, and Drew, and so. It's just that, there's definitely a limit, and we have a head of product development who actually has to solve this equation in her head of like, how many people do we have, how many projects can we make, and to make them all done well and not drive everybody crazy. So yes, there's a cap.
There's a cap.
We're pretty much at it.
Do you feel like you will ever go back to a game where you have to kind of go all in on a single game, or is that never going to happen again?
It's hard to imagine telling everyone at the studio, hey, we're all going to make one game. I mean, I think we could make bigger games than we're making now, and but having that be the only game the whole studio is doing and risking our whole existence on one would be a scary thing to do now. Because right now we have like multiple things going on. There are also multiple sources of revenue. It's like an airplane with multiple engines. Like one of them can go out, and we're not going to just crash. So it'd be scary to go back to helicopter? No, one engine.
Well, so it's funny, like, do you look back then at those days when that's what you did, like everybody, and think, I can't believe we did that for that long?
Well, yeah, I do kind of. Well, no, it was, because it was really tense at the beginning when you're trying to sign something, and then it would be kind of nice and stable feeling for a while. You didn't have to pitch anybody, and then at the end, you'd be like, okay, what's our next game? And that would be really tense again. So I can definitely see that you kind of would forget about how stressful it was to sign a project in between, but now we're always pitching, but then again we're not pitching to save the company every second. We're not like,
right,
please sign this game. We're going to go out of business in 3 weeks, which is our plan for the 2000s,
so
2010. That was our business plan.
Do you think the industry as a whole has changed because of all these sort of new ways you can get funding?
I mean, I think all of entertainment has changed in the last few years because the model because distribution and manufacturing were so hard for film and records and everything. Digital distribution and digital media has just made it just so accessible, and it's taken away the need for a really monolithic type, like, here, I'm a big company, I have a bunch of money, only we know how to press records and print games and stuff, and only we know where the trucks are that take us to the stores. And that's just not the case anymore. People can put their own game up on Steam, they can put out their own album, so it's a crazy time. It's crazy times, but it's awesome. Do you think?
I think it's neat. It's changed a lot. I think it's sort of upended a lot of ideas, and seemingly it could be the next generation of game consoles that's doing it. But seemingly there's there's been this blossoming of game types that we're not used to seeing, as gamers.
And I don't think it's really a threat. It's not like this would tear down old publishers, but it definitely, because they didn't want to necessarily have everyone dependent on them financially either. They didn't want, when you pitched a game to them, they said, great, and you don't need any funding from us, do you? And you'd be like, actually, yeah, I do kind of want you to fund it. And so they're happy that we are like, oh, we have all this funding from this other, a lot of publishers are letting developers do Kickstarters, and then they're still publishing them.
Right.
They're kind of hiding. They're kind of lurking. They're like, don't look at us. They're just
behind the curtain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What, so you guys, how many of your games, like the ones that you're working on now, how many of those, or will any of those show up in a store, like on a shelf in a box?
We know we signed that deal with Nordic Games.
Oh, right.
Okay. Us to do a disc-based version of some of our games, and that's, there's certain markets where that's still super viable. It's hard for us by ourselves.
Right.
It is hard to manufacture stuff. Someone has to pay for all those discs. It's a risk, So that's a situation where a publisher was able to be, the right partner, a good partner with us, and help us do something we couldn't do on our own. It'd be fairly hard to do.
No, I thought that was just with Costume Quest and what was the other game that they have?
And Stacking.
Yeah. Is it with other games as well, or is it just those two?
Right now, those are the first two.
But you think like Broken Age? You think there are other games?
It could be, yeah.
Is that sort of what you're using to test the water then?
I'm actually worried now that I don't know what's announced. Can I check for a second?
No. But hypothetically speaking, it's something that you guys are interested in, or at least you're thinking about it.
Yeah,
like.
I mean, it is still nice to have a disc of something you made.
You want to be able to put it on the shelf. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm sure you want to.
What am I going to sign after that? I have to sign arms.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
People can get those tattooed afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think you Broken Age is? Well, actually, right now, what is the biggest game you think that you guys are working on? Is it Broken Age, or is it Chalice?
Broken Age by budget would be the biggest, and Massive Chalice. Yeah.
So the biggies.
Right. Yeah, right now. Yeah.
What do you, or is there one game that you're sort of mostly involved in? Or
Broken Age.
Broken Age.
I'm running Broken Age and still writing it all and stuff like that. So that's my game, and then JP's running Space Base, and Brandon's doing Hack and Slash, and Brad Muir, who you met.
Yes.
Brad Muir just got married.
Nice.
Yeah, good for him. And he's running that and Massive Chalice.
That being his wedding?
I don't actually know if he actually is running that situation. He's at least partner. He's at least 50% of that.
Okay. After Broken Age is done, the second part is out. What is it that you want to do?
It's funny because the Kickstarter kind of dragged me back into running a project. I was being the creative director of the studio and just helping out. And Costume Quest needed some writing help, so I helped out writing on there.
Right.
Iron Brigade needed a little story thing, so I did stuff for that. And that's kind of what I was doing. And I liked that because there's a lot less pressure than running a project. And so Kickstarter, that project kind of pulled me back into making my own game, which I remembered how fun it was. But it's also really time consuming. It's hard to be I'm in here with my door closed a lot writing, which is hard to do when you're trying to just make sure all the other projects are okay.
Right.
And luckily we have really senior people to run all those projects. They're pretty autonomous.
So have you decided, is it the next thing going to be you backing away, or do you think you might want to do another game?
I think just taking a little break and then coming back with
Broken Age 2.
Or something else huge that will just take over the whole games industry.
You've got some beloved titles that you guys haven't done things with. Are you re-examining any of those? Do you have ownership of all
of everything?
Really?
Yeah.
So we're waiting.
I know.
Those sound like Kickstarters to me.
Yeah, or we could do something new, or we could do a sequel. Which would you rather do?
I think
hard though.
Psychonauts.
That would be fun. Psychonauts would be fun. I would like to do a sequel to. I always say. The other day I said, I'd love to do a sequel to Brutal Legend, and somehow that became the news. People were not aware that I always want to do a sequel to all of our games, and we just always do have another idea for something we want to do. But okay, we'll come back and do a sequel after we get all these ideas out. Then we'll come back and go back to the.
But that'll never happen. It sounds like, because you're constantly coming out with new things.
But Psychonauts is one that I've always thought about, just because it's something that's constantly renewable because every time you meet some crazy person or interesting, let's say interesting person.
Wait, in San Francisco?
Every time you like, you meet a really distinct personality, and you're like, I wonder what color the sky is in their world, and you're like, oh, that could be a good level. That'd be a good level in Psychonauts. So I keep thinking about it, and someday it will happen.
I think you've got a little break from Broken Age.
Yeah.
Do a little Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And you'll...
Maybe. I'd also like to do Brutal Legend and Connect Party. I don't know. I'd like that
Really?
one too. That was awesome. Did you ever play it?
No, actually, I heard it was very good though.
Yeah, you didn't play it. See, if you play it, you'd be like, yeah, do that. That would be the best sequel ever.
Psychonauts. I'm all.
Well, yeah, that too. See?
Yeah, but that's like you're holding it back, like it's like you have it over here. You're like, oh yeah, I know we can do that. Yeah.
Well, because it would have to be done right. I mean, you can't just do a little Psychonauts game. I mean, it would have to be, I feel, like a worthy successor to the first game. So it'd be like the size of the first game, but next gen, and so it'd have to be a little bit bigger. And
would that be your whole team if you did something like that?
I mean, right now that would be like, a lot of the team.
Have you guys? What about growing? Have you guys ever thought about? I mean, recently, have you thought about growing your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's as long as you grow slowly and you don't grow past like certain numbers. I mean, I was at LucasArts all the way from I started, there were 40 people there, and when I left there were like 300 people. So there's definitely different stages where it's, stabilizes and is still a good kind of family. We were even 150 people at one point where I still knew everybody's name, and we still had, like a family feeling to it.
Right,
so
right.
I think there's definitely, you can be bigger than 60 people and still have, but we've been pretty stable at 60 for a long time.
Yeah.
I think if we were going to do something like Psychonauts 2, we'd have to have enough room to do Psychonauts 2 and still do other things, because I still think that's an important part of the company now, is that we don't just do one thing at a time.
Don't go all in.
Just because I feel like it's important to be able to have alternatives, creative alternatives, so you're not just, maybe that's just part of my ADD. It's harder for me to focus on one thing, but I think people need to know that there's life outside of the one thing that you're doing.
Right. What's your favorite platform right now? Doesn't have to be Xbox.
I believe in all. They're all my favorite.
What I mean,
I could never pick a favorite.
Let's say console, PC, mobile. Like, is there something that you, among those, that you like more than others?
I mean, you go through different phases. I was really, with consoles, I was really into. I've always played a lot of console games ever since the Atari 2600, right? I mean, I played a lot of those, but the last couple of years, the idea of self-publishing has pulled us back to the PC, where there's just so much freedom to, self-publish and have so much of a direct connection with the players. Not as many walls in between you and them.
Right.
And I think, though the console makers have obviously woken up to that, it seems like they've all changed their business practices to allow, independent publishing to happen on their consoles. So. In the end, I just feel like it's wherever the gamers are. I feel like none of them are Magic, and I just want to be as many places as we can. And we, our engine is now on everything, and so we can be on every platform, and we want to just be kind of agnostic in that way.
Have you guys are you looking at the indie stuff for PlayStation or Xbox?
Yeah. I mean, they're all really exciting programs. I'd like to be on those platforms, and I'm sure we are going to be.
Is that, you think you'd go that route?
The independent publishing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to self-publish on those platforms for sure.
That's cool. So I want to ask you about, going back to Kickstarter. When you first had your completed the Kickstarter, you and I talked about how it changed a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And one of those, I think, was the journalism of it. You know where this is headed.
Oh, maybe. Let me get ready for this. I don't know what this is actually, but
no, it's not a gotcha or anything. But I'm intrigued, and I really would like to hear your opinion on this. The whole idea of backer only versus not backer only. There was some of that. You guys, unfortunately, were one of the first big studios doing stuff. And I think you were one of the first people to run into this. But
I think you guys were one of the first people to report on it.
yes, we were.
Yeah, you guys are groundbreaking in another way.
So have you had time to think about it? What do you like? How do you think? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we learned a lot, doing that Kickstarter, and I think the fact that it caused tension, because we had one of the things we were promising to our backers is an exclusive backer community, the exclusive access to exclusive materials, like you get to hear news first. And it gets really, really hard to keep that stuff exclusive. And we feel this obligation because we promise people this. But it does create a lot of tension. You see that when we released, Broken Age, there was all this talk about the embargo. Because a lot of people just had never heard of embargoes before, and it sounds really like sinister.
Right.
And a lot of us get so used to because pretty much everything's embargoed, and people a lot of it just they're used to it, and a lot of people in journalism kind of come to rely on it. Like, okay, I have this long to get my article done or whatever.
Right.
And it's just convenient because if someone's coming out from Minnesota to look at your game one week, but the other guy can't come until from another, and you want to have everyone, you want to be fair to all the outlets.
Right.
That's what embargo helps you with. So these practical. I don't know why I'm talking about embargo so much, but when people heard about it, they're like, embargo? Who does Double Fine think they are to embargo things? And
because these were people who bought the game and thought.
Well, they backed it.
They backed it.
So backers, and they wanted to make their Let's Play videos.
Right, and we
were like, but that could be not. We didn't want to spoil the game because it's a story game, so it would be spoiled before a lot of people could play it.
Right.
And also, we're telling our journalist friends that it's embargoed to a certain date.
Right. And
you're going to break that. But a lot of them were just, and then most of the players were fine with that. But there's this kind of a gray area in between of bloggers who are, getting into journalists,
Right.
And they're like, hey, I bought this product, I own it, and I'm going to blog about it, and you can't stop me. And we're like, no, we can't stop you. We never said we could stop you. We just asked, please don't spoil it for.
Right.
And at the end, we just had forget it, just do whatever you want, and just because you can't really expect 90,000 people to keep a secret for very long.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's a lot of gray areas there. So in general, I don't know if we would. I mean, there's a benefit to having a private backer area, but with Massive Chalice, we went full open. It's all open, so you can watch the documentary, you can see their team streams, you can see how Massive Chalice is doing, and part of that was a reaction to that because it does put us in an awkward situation. It puts developers and journalists in this awkward thing where we talk about we don't want to get mad at people for leaking things that maybe that's not even a leak, but the person they heard it from, they didn't know it was a leak. They,
Right.
Often, a journalist will hear a tip from somebody, and that person who gave them the tip didn't tell. Oh, by the way, I got this in a private backer forum, and you should print this.
Yes.
And so there's just all these. It's just that stuff is just a mess, and so it'd be nicer to have it be all open.
Do you think I think, and when we talked prior, when the Kickstarter was first successful, I think I was talking to you about the idea that it sort of commoditizes the information, and not deliberately, but basically it's this idea of, without realizing it, I think it creates this other sort of layer of, like you said, it's not, I wouldn't call it a layer of confusion, but it's basically like you're expanding your development team to include backers on some level.
Yeah, and I think there's a way to make them feel like they're part of the development, because it's a positive thing. They're seeing the development process, and they feel like, oh, I'm getting to see how this game's getting made, and I can voice my opinion, and they're listening to me. And I think they can have all the good things about that, and you don't necessarily need secrecy to be part of it.
Right.
It doesn't, it'd probably still be just backers who look at that forum because they're the ones who care, they back your project. So you don't necessarily have to have a big gate that locks everybody else out. And, we wish we didn't in a lot of ways, because our documentary is such a great tool for letting people know about the game and getting people interested in the game, but it's already only going out to the people who already are bought in.
Right.
It'd be nice if everyone got to see that documentary too, because that's why Amnesia Fortnite, everyone gets to see the documentary and brings people in. But we learned a lot about when you have this kind of private community. When we made the announcement about splitting the game, to our backers, it was like, okay, we're getting the bigger game than we originally were going to get, and we get it earlier than we were going to get if we had to wait till the whole thing was done. And we don't need to pay any more money, and it sounds like a good idea. And then when that kind of leaked out to people who hadn't heard about the game since the Kickstarter, they're like, they heard this version of the story, which is like, oh, Double Fine's out of money, and they printed the headline some places. Double Fine's out of money. Double Fine going back to backers, or but the great thing was that our own backers came and they filled the comment section. We're like, this is not right. They're not asking for more money, and that's just one of the great things you get when you kickstart something, is you get the money, but you get this community of people who feel really invested. But it's just one of those things that I think came about because we kind of took it for granted that everybody knew what was up.
Right.
Because we talked about it episode after episode about the schedule and the budget and stuff. So people watching the documentary really knew what was going on, but people who weren't watching it didn't. And we kind of like learned that difference and the impact that difference can have.
So you think then that, and I guess I still see people doing it, but it doesn't seem as prevalent. I mean, I know you could still do backer-only updates, but it seems like a lot of people have sort of stepped back from doing that as much. Because I guess also it's the idea that I think people want coverage, like they want to have updates.
I think it's
at least
just
sometimes.
too problematic to do in the end, because I think you feel the only reason you promise that to people is you feel like you've got to give them something of value.
Right.
But really, when people back a project, they're backing it because they want that project to exist. They're not necessarily doing this value proposition of like, if I give them this, they'll give me that. They're more just like, I really want a graphic adventure, point and click, to happen. Here's my $15, and it's so great that I get to play it and watch this documentary. But most people aren't doing that kind of, the way they don't have the same attitude you have if you're ordering something off of Amazon.
Right.
And you're like, you better give me my damn toilet paper when I ordered it. And it better,
Toilet paper? Nice.
You don't subscribe to toilet paper? It's very convenient.
Monthly toilet paper. Is there anything else that you feel like from that first Kickstarter? Any other things that you would do differently, or you feel?
I mean, we learned as we went. It was the days of the Kickstarter. People were just finding all this stuff from the backers. They're like, they want a DRM-free version, and they want you to talk about stretch goals and stuff. We were like, so what's a stretch goal? We had no idea. So we kind of learned a lot as we went. I think the main thing about not having it be as secret, I think, is the main thing that we would change. What else would we change? I think nowadays people are learning the hazards of physical rewards.
Yes.
Having to mail out a whole bunch of T-shirts and posters can bust your budget, but we planned for that in advance, so it wasn't a big deal for us. It's
interesting looking at Kickstarters now that are hitting those goals. Seemingly one of the biggest problems has been like there are so many Kickstarters that went back and said, hey, is there any chance that we can maybe not mail stuff to you? Because it turns out that costs a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people just anticipated the costs of shipping, but they forgot about international shipping. Or they found out that international shipping has a certain tax they weren't aware of, and just that little bit, multiplied by all their backers, just breaks the bank. And so,
you dodged most of that though, right? I mean,
we
were planned ahead.
I mean, the two-player guys and Greg, so it would all calculate, because we added it slowly. We're like, let's add a T-shirt. Well, how much should that be? Well, how much will the T-shirt cost to make and mail? Will it give us enough new people to pay for it? So we did all that calculation in advance, so we didn't really get screwed by the rewards. But there are definitely a lot of them. And we still have to, we have to make a big box version of Broken Age and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool. That's neat. That's going to be exciting, though, the merchandising side of things.
Yeah, that is cool. We got T-shirts we get to wear now. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking so much time.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.